What's up, everybody? I appreciate y'all for tuning in to another episode of True Talks. This week, I wanted to focus on exonerees. So given that we actually just allowed a man to walk free after an investigation from the Davidson County District Attorney's Conviction Review Unit, I felt like I should really have this next guest on this episode to talk about some of the work that she's doing, especially with her debut documentary called Conviction, which is available on Amazon Prime. I'm not going to drag this intro out at all. I'm actually just going to welcome Gia Royce into this podcast for this episode and let you guys hear from her yourself about what she's doing and why she's doing it. So, hey, Gia.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. I've looked forward to this interview, especially after watching your debut documentary. It was really good.
Thank you so much. It was quite the experience making it too. And it's always so nice to hear, when you put a year of your time into something and people like you say they like it, that's great.
Yeah, it's always good to get some feedback, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Good and bad, I guess.
So give us a little bit of background on this guy that you kind of not tracked his prison time, but really post him getting released as an exoneree. What did that look like? What all went into that process?
Yeah, his name is Jeffrey Deskovic, and just to give a little backstory, he was 16 years old, and he was at Peekskill High School, and it's a small town, and there wasn't much crime there at all. I think, if I remember correctly, there wasn't even any kind of homicide, murder for at least 10 years prior to what happened with Jeff. Yeah, and he was in high school, and unfortunately, a classmate, Angela Correa, was murdered. She was raped and murdered. And Jeff knew her very briefly, like acquaintances. And when that happened, of course, detectives came to the school to question the students and were asking them, what they knew and who had seen her last and stuff like that, the normal course of events that would occur. And some of the students said that Jeff was kind of quiet, and I think they maybe said he was odd, and that was all it really took for them to focus their attention on Jeff. And from that point, I guess they had a wake for Angela, and Jeff was very emotional at the wake. He was crying a lot, and now that I've talked to Jeff, he said he was crying a lot because it was his first brush with death. He had never, seen anything like it. And it just impacted him a lot. He was really upset by it. And the police at the time took his emotional state to mean that he was guilty and he was feeling guilt for what he did. And so that was another cemented the narrative they had in their head about the fact that he committed this murder. And for months they took him around pretending to let him help with the investigation. Meanwhile, they were feeding him details of the crime, details that only the person who did it would know, and all of that just to, in the end, get a false confession out of him and put him in prison for, I think he got 15 years to life.
Yeah, I was blown away by his case and just hearing his story. I was also a little taken aback by how he was able to process it and be calm about it. He speaks from a place of not bitterness, but just understanding it happened to him. Were there any private conversations about how he was just truly able to overcome that circumstance?
Yeah, there were. And it's really interesting that you asked me this because I asked Jeff the exact same question. I said, how can you be so even keel about it? And how are you so, he talks about it so calmly. Funny enough, behind the scenes, and you won't see this in the movie, but he cracks jokes about it. He makes very dark jokes about it. And the first time he did that, I was really taken aback because I was like, did I hear what I thought I heard? Because you don't want to laugh in these situations,
Mm-hmm.
But he does. He can laugh about it now. I mean, he takes it very seriously, obviously, but he does, and it's really, really interesting. I guess just the human. What's the word I'm looking for? Just people's drive to be okay. He obviously processes it, and no matter what you go through, you're going to have some, humor, and you're going to have to laugh at some point. And Jeff does a good job of that, I guess. But I did ask him this, and he said that he almost feels like it happened to somebody else and not to him. And so when he talks about it, he compartmentalizes it. So he doesn't, it's almost like he's talking about somebody else, is what he said. And he said he has to do that to cope. with the trauma of everything that he went through. And then sometimes he'll make jokes about it. And I guess he's far enough removed because he was released 14 years ago, I think.
Okay.
14 years ago. And because he's done so much advocacy work for wrongful convictions, he has told his story. And this is just my opinion. I mean, what I'm guessing from what I've seen, he's just told his story so many times that maybe he's become, more comfortable with it and has processed through the emotions. He also went through years of therapy. So I'm sure, I haven't talked to him about that specifically, but I'm sure that's played a part.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy because when I was looking at it, I was taken aback by it because I didn't understand how a person can reach that place of peace, having so much of their life given up to this circumstance that shouldn't have even been a circumstance,
Yeah, I say the same thing. I mean, it's so hard to imagine what you would do if you were in that situation when we haven't been in that situation, thankfully. But I always think that I would just be angry. I would be so angry. But the funny thing is, the few people that, Jeff, and then a few people that have either known family members of somebody who's been wrongfully convicted or, one of my favorite books ever is Reuben Carter's 16th Round. And in his account of his wrongful conviction back in, I think, the 60s, they all three that I personally have any kind of, experience with have all said the same thing, that they've just had so much of their life taken away and they don't want to spend the rest of their life angry. So they just have to pick up the pieces and make the most of what they have now. And it's really remarkable.
Yeah. It's crazy because like the guy that I opened this episode up with talking about, I don't get a sense that he's even bitter. And that was just an article. I think right now he's more focused on, restoring his family, reconnecting, because he spent 20 years in prison for something that he didn't do. And I think that that's interesting. Like I always result back to Nelson Mandela, and the time in which he spent in prison and that kind of calm that comes over people. Mm-hmm. But I think that a commonality that maybe criminal justice reform needs to focus on is something that Jeffrey mentioned, which was the pen pal. Mm-hmm. I thought that was cool because it kind of restored some good in him about the circumstance he was in. He talks about criminal justice reform in a way that I think none of us can envision because we haven't experienced it. He talks about how they're clumping people in cells and in a prison that are basically shouldn't even be there, from the mental illness factor that's there, as well as people who have kind of committed crimes that were lesser value compared to others who are there for death row, people who are dying and receiving chemotherapy. Like, he painted a picture that most of us don't think about when we think about prison, the sick, the elderly, those who are not supposed to be there. And so I'm always intrigued to know when they hear criminal justice reform and having walked that path, what it looks like to them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. I mean, Jeff, I felt the same way you feel when I was interviewing Jeff, and that one scene in the car where he's talking about exactly this. I'd never thought I'd always had a passion to help people that have been wrongfully convicted, because I can't imagine being accused of something so horrific that you didn't do and then have the whole world believe you did it. That's just, in addition to the physical hell that prison is, it would also be a mental hell, to think that people believe you could be this monster. Right. And only in talking to Jeff did I even start to think about these other people who, like you were just mentioning, who are, near death and they're in there, or they, have really great medical needs and they're in there and things like that. It wasn't even something I was thinking about. For sure, it's not something that the average person thinks about unless you've experienced it like Jeff has.
Yeah, I think, it enlightened me a bit because I think a lot of people always think of the harsh things that should happen to prisoners. This was a movie that really changed my scope of prison and what really it consists of,
Yeah, I felt the same way in making the film.
Exactly. Yeah. What do you think about the pen pal piece? Do you think there should be more of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for prisoners in general, anything that's going to make that's going to help rehabilitate, so that if and when they do come back out, that they can integrate into society and be better members of society, even if they had committed a crime. Those are all positive things that should continue to happen, which, obviously in a lot of cases don't. Like, I think Jeff was mentioning about taking college education away. I mean, that doesn't make any sense for what we want the end outcome to be for these people, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and I think about it from a standpoint of he was so young going into it, the hopes and dreams that he had. Why not? If there are people like him and there are even people who have committed a lesser crime that are actually guilty and they entered at such a young age, why not reemerge them into society with the opportunity of going to college and bettering themselves, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, when can education be a bad thing for
Yeah.
anybody?
Yeah,
Right?
that's
Yeah.
true. But, you know, it's all going to be left up to legislation, you know, and that sucks because a lot of times those are not people who have walked the walk, you know?
Yes. Yes. And in many cases, it's the opposite. Like in Jeff's case, it's corrupt prosecutors who were willing to do this to a 16-year-old. So, you know, their motives are completely different, you know?
Yeah, and talk about that because I feel like, you know, from jump, it was misrepresentation. I don't understand how he was able to be questioned at such a young age. You know, this is
Yeah.
something that happens a lot more often than you think, guys. Like it really does with DAs and stuff. Like it's
Yeah.
crazy.
It's, you know, I interviewed Jeff's mom because I don't know if I told you this, but I'm working on the feature length documentary. I'm actually in post production for the
Oh,
feature
cool.
documentary of Jeff's story. So it'll be out in 2021. So there'll be a much longer version. And I interviewed Jeff's mom for that. And, you know, she said, you know, I told him not to talk to them. I told him not to talk to the police. And because, you know, he was 16 and at 16, you don't always listen to your parents, right? And she said, don't do it. And so because he was doing it against her will, he didn't tell her that all that time he was going to talk to them. And, you know, they took him back to the crime scene. They took him all kinds of places. And he's just a 16-year-old kid, no lawyer present, no adult, no parent, no guardian. And that obviously played a part in how he got into this mess, because if she had known, maybe she would have put a stop to it. Maybe they wouldn't have been able to do what they did. But who knows now? But that did play a part in why they have it out there. Yeah.
That's terrible. I mean,
Yeah.
even an innocent mistake like that shouldn't be so costly, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, we've all been 16 and not listened to what our parents told us to do.
Yeah. Man, I mean, that it's a lot about this film that sticks out. And I'm trying to like prevent myself from asking you too much because I really want everyone that's watching or listening to this from wherever you guys tune in to really take the time out to go see it. So I'm not trying to give, you know, any spoilers. Wow. So what would you encourage people, or why would you encourage people to check out this film?
You know, the biggest thing for me is I feel like, you know, everyone has some cause that they care about, you know, whatever that may be. But it seems to me that for majority of people, wrongful convictions or criminal, you know, injustice is not one of those things. Just because if it doesn't touch you personally, you don't really think about it. I mean, you can always, you know, you see ads on TV for world hunger and things like that, or, you know, animals that need a home, and those things pull at your heartstrings. But most people don't think about wrongful convictions, and the average person trusts law enforcement. They think that if somebody got arrested or the cops said they did it, then they did it, and that's not always the case. And actually, it's unfortunate, but I think it's something like 2.5 to 5% on a conservative level. 2.5 to 5% of prisoners in the U.S. are innocent. So that's like, if you do the math, that's over 100,000 people. So it's a cause that, you know, matters. So for me, if people watch the film and just realize that it's not always what it seems, and that this is a big issue in our country, that would be more than I could ask for. A little awareness.
And I think one thing that he said that stuck out to me was that no one is that silly and prison shouldn't be declared as incompetent. So there's a great deal of intention behind this cruelty that a lot of people inside are subjected to.
Yeah.
And that was alarming for me, you know, because like what you said, everything that you said, I echo 1000%, because when I think about it, I think of those who have either committed a crime, you know, like I'm aware that there are some that are wrongfully convicted in there. But I tend to gravitate, for me being someone of color, I think about, you know, the racial component to that, where a lot of Black and brown people are sitting in jail for crimes they didn't commit just because of the era in which they were born in and grew up in. They were subjected to, you know, racial profiling and got blamed for something, right? But then there's this whole other side with like Jeffrey's story, where it's just pure madness. I mean, it's literally a lack of people doing what you think should happen, I can't get into specifics because I don't know the law in and out like that, but there are just certain things that are just alarmingly wrong about his case.
Yes. Oh, for sure. I mean, there's a laundry list of things that are wrong in Jeff's case, even down to there was DNA in Jeff's case. And not only did the DNA not match him at the time of his initial trial, but the prosecutor or somebody in that camp had the medical examiner lie and make up a lie to make the lack of DNA evidence matching Jeff not be a factor in his initial trial. So there was that misconduct. And then fast forward years later, when he was trying to get the DNA tested to see if it matched somebody else in the criminal database, Janine Pirro was the DA in Westchester at the time, and she denied every request he sent to retest that DNA. And there's just, the list goes on and on and on. And it's like, anytime there's DNA, it doesn't make sense not to test it. It just doesn't make sense if it can free one person. And I think, I'm not 100% sure on this number, but I think if they would have tested the DNA initially, it would have saved Jeff 6 years of imprisonment. And that's huge of a 16-year sentence that he spent in there. That would have been a lot for him. But they never approved it until a new DA came into office and she approved it. And it took that change for somebody else to look at it. And it shouldn't be that way, that somebody sitting in there and has to wait for someone to lose their job or someone else to gain that job in order for DNA to be tested, or whatever evidence happens to be sitting there. And then in other cases I've read about, so often they say that, all of the evidence has been lost. If they want to retest something, they're like, it's lost. And how is that allowed to happen with things where someone's life is on the line? It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's such a sensitive case. It seems like it should be in a file somewhere at all times, even 10 million years from now,
Yeah, exactly.
Man. But that, when he said that about no one is that silly and talking about the incompetence behind the prison, it really made me think about what is prison really, and why he's so passionate about the death penalty and getting rid of that. Because he's seen the compassion behind bars. He's seen a lot of things that have just been straight out cruelty to those that we should really be extending compassion to. And I know that that's hard for someone who's actually lost the life of a loved one to an actual murderer. But we're talking about people who have no reason to be there.
Exactly. That's why I find wrongful convictions so heartbreaking, because it's just, not that it's right for other people, but if you did something wrong and you're serving the consequences of that, I'll feel bad for you still, but at least in your mind, you can justify that, well, they shouldn't have done this and it sucks that they're in this position. But when someone's nothing at all, it's so hard to wrap your mind around why they're being put through this.
Yeah, and when we jump to giving someone a death penalty, and don't have all of the facts, or we do have all the evidence and it's getting ignored, much like this case, that can be a life that we're losing for no reason. Where is his silver lining right now, post all of this experience, Well,
for Jeff, I mean, his life's mission is to help other people that were in his position. So that's what he does day and night, constantly. That's all he does, whether it's speaking at events, whether it's actually working on advocacy work to free other people. I mean, just everything under the sun. That's what he's devoted his life to, which is just remarkable. I asked Jeff in one of the interviews, I said, because once Jeff got out, he went on to sue the prosecutor who got the confession out of him. And I think he also sued the medical examiner who messed with the DNA evidence. And I asked him, when you got this settlement, because it was a big settlement, I said, when you got it, did you just want to go to Bahamas and live on the beach and say, F everybody, and I'm just going to be out here, I'm going to enjoy my life as much as I can now that I have the freedom? And he said, absolutely not. He said, I would be, if I did that, I would be essentially choosing to leave everybody behind, people that were in the same position as I was, people that helped me get through it while I was in there. He's like, I'm not going to turn my back on them. He's like, there was no question in my mind that I was going to do this work when I got out. And, he's even used his own money, his settlement money, to build a nonprofit so that he can just help people who are in this position. So Jeff has a very singular mission and he's very focused on it. And that is what he committed his life to doing.
Do you feel like he was just called to do this? Although the experience sucked, some people undergo certain experiences, I think, to be life changing, not only for themselves, but for others. And
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's funny because some people, I think it would be kind of, I don't know, 50-50 is the right, numbers, but I think some people would want to just get as far away from it as possible as a coping mechanism. And other people like Jeff, his way is to correct the system. And there's no right or wrong, but it is really remarkable what Jeff has done. And to your earlier question, I mean, he got out, started a nonprofit, a while after, and just through his advocacy work without having a law degree or anything. I think he freed, I think it was 7 people. It's in the end of the film, but I think it was 7.
Yeah, it was 7. I remember I was like, man, that's insane. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah, like who can do that? Of course he really, really understands the system because he's been stuck in it for so long, but it's amazing. It's amazing that he could do that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Man, I just think everyone should take the time out to check this film out. Don't waste any time, guys. Go to Amazon Video, type in Conviction, and watch it in its entirety. It's about 20 something minutes long, I think.
Yeah, it's a short 21 minutes. Yep.
Yeah, so you got the attention span for it. Look, and it's really good. And I think that Gia, you all did a very great job of progressing the story along, and like really, the shot composition is beautiful. I love it. And it feels like an intimate thing for the viewer.
Thank you so much, Shanice, because this is my first film, first of all.
Wow.
So the fact that you like it so much, it really makes me feel good. But yeah, it's a short. And after the feature comes out next year, the short won't be available anymore. So for anyone who does want to see it, check it out before. But
yeah,
we'll have a version that'll have, I should mention the short really features, as you said, on Jeff's personal struggle since he got out of prison. Whereas the feature film is going to talk more about the legal system and false confessions and how does that happen and how did he confess to something that he didn't do and why did he do that, and then just all of the other legal aspects. Why did Jeanine Pirro not allow the DNA test to happen, and then when it did happen, how did he piece his life back together, and what did his mom think of this whole thing? And it really expands on the story, and it's been really great making it. It feels weird to say sometimes that it's been a good experience making it because it's such a sad topic, but it's been really nice to hear from all of the people that were involved in Jeff's story and the part that they played and how it all came together too. This isn't in the short, but when Jeff was writing letters, how you were talking about, he had a pen pal and then he was also just writing letters to anybody to see could help him. He said majority of the time nobody ever wrote him back. So he was just for 4 years, I think, writing letters. And one of the letters he wrote to somebody who was not able to help him actually forwarded that letter to another woman who they thought could help. And her name was Claudia Whitman. And she actually works in this field to help people who've been wrongfully convicted. And she actually wrote Jeff back. So he didn't even write to Claudia. He wrote to somebody else. And that somebody else took it upon themselves to forward the letter to someone they thought could help. And she wrote Jeff back and said, I think you should rewrite to the Innocence Project based on, XYZ, whatever it was that she noticed in his case at the time that might help him. And sure enough, that's what he did. And that is what led him to getting out. And so, Yeah, it's just really interesting.
So many breakthroughs, man, with a little bit of effort,
Yeah. And, Jeff is in the minority. Most people that are wrongfully convicted don't get out. So,
right. That's so true. Man, well, I appreciate the film. Like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'll probably end up watching it again. Guys, it feels like you're sitting in the room with Jeff. Majority of the time that I was watching, I got that feeling like I'm the one sitting across from him, just listening to this guy speak and be so humbled and not, like I said, he wasn't overexcited in his expressions. He was just even toned and just telling it like it is, I'm not going to go further into it because I want you guys to check it out. I will spoil the entire film because there's so much that I enjoyed about it. But, this film actually, I can say this part, it's won several awards. I mean, it's racking up in a lot of different film festivals nationwide. And so congrats to you, Gia.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a really awesome ride that way. Actually, just last weekend, we won Best Cinematography and Best Picture at the Georgia Documentary Film Festival. And Jeff and I both went down there. So we got to celebrate together and he was really excited. And for me, it was just really nice to see that for him, you know?
Yeah. Somebody being that vulnerable about their story too. I mean, hey, it's a great reward to have people just happy to know you, you know, and acknowledge you and what you've been through, you know?
Yes. Yes. And to even think, I mean, for me, I always look at it like in the scope of his life. One day, you know, he was sitting in solitary confinement in a prison, not knowing if he'll ever be out. And to see him jumping up and down on the stage, so excited about the movie, just really made me happy. It just, you know, warmed my heart, it was like all worth it, you know?
Yeah. So will you continue to do films like these, or do you have dreams of venturing out into other topics?
No, this is actually all I want to do. I had a long 2-decade career in the fashion industry prior to switching careers a year ago to go into filmmaking. And the reason I switched careers is because I wanted to do something to help this cause. And I thought this was something that could reach a broader audience. And clearly it is reaching a broader audience. So that was good. I want to continue to work on stories about wrongful convictions. And so I have the second one almost complete, which I mentioned to you. I'm starting on the third one now. I mean, who knows 10 years down the road if I'll make different kinds of films. But right now, this is what I really want to do.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Yeah, I saw where you had headed to Georgia and racked up there. I was like, okay, Gia, I see you. I see you.
Yeah, that was awesome. It was a little nerve-wracking because I haven't been on a subway, let alone an airplane, since January, since COVID started, you know? So it was a little nerve-wracking to get down there, but we did it, and we were happy to have the experience, you know?
Yeah, you're in New York, so they had pretty much shut a lot of things down, right?
They did. And then everything reopened for the most part for outdoor dining and stuff because they got it under control, and now it's rising again. So we're back in the same boat. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, this COVID situation has a mind of its own. We all just gotta play the hand we're dealt and pray for the best, huh?
I know. You know, I keep saying, I mean, it's terrible, but there are little silver linings. Like we're all connecting this way, like you and I connected. And I've connected with so many people this way that I may not have connected with had we just been going on with life as as usual and been super busy and not connected with people in other parts of the world. So there's been that's been nice.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll be able to connect on a film, girl. I'd love to be your understudy, even if you just need me setting some stuff up in the room. Because when I fan out over things, I fan out seriously. And
we can make that happen.
Okay. Look, post COVID, you can count on me. I will be there.
Girl, I made this film with like 2 other people, so I always need the help.
Yeah, see, my background is in videography. I graduated from Belmont with media studies being my bachelor's degree. So, yeah, I'm on board.
That's great. Well, we'll have to talk about that for sure.
Yeah, no, I just love, genuinely, man, I loved what you did with this film. I love that it involved a real story, and hopefully people gravitate to more documentaries through this gap, especially more like these, because there's a lot to be learned.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's really a good time for documentaries. There's so many great ones out there right now.
Yeah. So while y'all Netflixing and chilling, go to Amazon Prime, go to that Amazon Video and chill there too. Check out some cool documentaries and start with Gia's.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. But hey, I appreciate you for talking with me today. Guys, like I said, go check out Conviction. Follow Gia everywhere. Gia, plug your social media feeds so they can harass you on there. Okay. And follow you like weirdos. That's what we telling people do, is follow people nowadays. You know how weird that would have been in the 90s?
Oh, a hilarious sketch about this in the 90s. Like, I'm going to send it to you when we're done, but it talks about like following people, and it shows someone like stalking someone, literally just following them everywhere. And it does this whole series it's hilarious. But anyways, we're on Instagram. It's Gia Docs, like documentary. So it's JIADOCS. And my website is GiaWertz, JIAWERTZ.com. And we're on Facebook. It's Conviction Documentary. And Jeffrey, you can follow him on, I think it's jeffreydeskovic.org, I believe. Yeah, but I'll send it to you. I'll send you all the links too.
Yeah, for sure. Is that where he's plugging his foundation and everything?
Yeah, it's for his foundation. Exactly.
Nice. Well, hey, I appreciate you for talking with me. Guys, like I always tell you guys, you can find me on Instagram at trutalkspodcast. And be blessed in every day that God gives you. Your life is full of purpose. Until next time, deuces.